Hello again. This is Michael Ware, Chairman of the Iowa Firearms Coalition. I've got with me a fellow board member, John McLaughlin. You were in D.C. on what date was that?
That was 1/6/21, the day that we thought would live in history, but maybe infamy. We'll see how it all goes down.
Yeah, well, we'll see. There's a lot of things that I hear coming out that haven't been verified but have been discussed far and wide. So why don't you give us a skinny? You were there, and under what circumstance? Tell us what was going on.
Okay, Mindy and I were both there. We started out, turned out to be a really good trip. We showed up at the Trump portion of the rally, which started between the White House and the Washington Mall. I would guess, probably 5 or 6 like NFL-sized stadiums filled with people, so well into the hundreds of thousands of people, and totally peaceful. We met people from China, from Korea, from virtually all over the United States. There was never a harsh word spoken. People were singing God Bless America, national anthem, chanting USA, USA, very typical of what you'd expect at basically a Trump rally. Trump was a little conciliatory, saying, I don't know what Mike Pence is going to do. I hope he does the right thing. And people were cheering, obviously, hoping for, some miracle to come out of the sky. And everything in the Trump rally was normal. And we left about 20 minutes before he ended. He said something like, there will be another rally at the Capitol. We'll see all you guys up there. And I said, let's start hoofing it up toward the Capitol, because literally there's going to be several 100,000 people, and I don't want to be in the middle of the crowd. And Mindy said the same thing.
How far apart? Give us an idea how far apart these two venues are. So how long did it take to traverse?
It's probably about a 25-minute walk.
Okay.
So basically from the White House across to where the Capitol complex is. So it was a pretty good hike, but you walk down Constitution Avenue and you're looking at all the historic buildings, and there's people already in place lining the way, cheering, singing. Preachers were on the sidewalk, saying repent, repent, the end is near, all the kind of stuff you'd expect at a protest/rally. But that was all good. There was not one hint throughout the whole morning of anything that was going wrong. Now, I will say, just from a situational awareness standpoint, when we first got to the rally portion of it with Trump speaking, that was, shoulder to shoulder. So we worked our way out of the crowd to a point where if something nutty happened, terrorist attack, airplane crash, whatever, there were all kinds of threats out there, that we had a escape valve to the south toward the Washington Monument. So fast forward a little bit. So we left before Trump stopped speaking to avoid the crowd to get to the Capitol, where another rally was supposed to start at 1 o'clock. And so we got up there before 1 o'clock, and that was supposed to be on the east side of the Capitol. And we really couldn't even get to the east side of the Capitol. There were barricades in place, police cars, lots of portable fencing, basically being set up for the inauguration. And we saw a lot of people, I would say in the neighborhood of 500, already toward the Capitol steps. And we're like, well, are we in the wrong place? Why is all these people here? The rally's supposed to be on the other side. And it didn't really make sense, but we kept moving closer and moving closer, and started hearing people on a bullhorn saying, we need help up here. Send people up front. They have weapons. So who is they? And all we could see was like basically a big tussle. We could not see any individual weapons. So at that point, Mindy basically said, this feels like a trap. And so we egressed to the north, and we had already been like watching, keeping good situational awareness the whole time, figuring, okay, if things go bad, here's our valley. We're going north and then back east a little bit. So we moved to an area where some police, and again, I should say, when this started pre-1 o'clock, very limited police presence. It's almost like, are they not expecting several 100,000 people? Because the Capitol Police, we finally saw them. They were all in yellow vests and white bike helmets. And they walked up the south side of the Capitol and then around to the other side. So where the activity was starting, very limited presence. And so as we made our way to the north, kind of north of the Capitol complex, like at the northwest corner of the building, a guy in Trump gear came out and said, I need medics. And then a cop came out and basically walked right up to us and says, you might want to consider getting out of here. Someone's just been stabbed, BLM. So whether it was a BLM guy that got stabbed or it was BLM doing the stabbing, of course, we assumed there were bad actors already in the crowd down in front of the Capitol. And so we're like, oh, wow. And I told Mindy, well, let's just hang here. Things get crazy. Maybe we can help. in some capacity because I had my trauma gear with me.
Mm-hmm.
And so they got down, they hauled that guy out there doing CPR on top of him. Basically, the guy that went and hauled her for medics was on top of the stretcher giving him CPR, who I assume was a Trump person. And I could hear law enforcement on their radios also talking about a bomb threat. So I told Mindy, I said, you know, if things start going crazy, here's what we're going to do. We're going to walk northwest, and then we're going to catch the diagonal back toward the hotel. So we had a pretty good plan in the open of how to get out of there.
Okay.
So it wasn't long after that, they hauled somebody else out on a makeshift stretcher made out of one of the barricades. And by this time, there was media up on top of these scaffolding that had been set up for the inauguration. We could see people climbing up there. Definitely was getting more boisterous, but the main Trump crowd hadn't even arrived yet. They were still waiting for the end of the rally. And we could look down Constitution Avenue and see the crowd starting to come toward us. But at this time, there was still around 1 o'clock, maybe, I don't know, 1,500, 2,000 people is all that was there. And as the crowd started coming up, another guy, we saw him coming out of the crowd with 2 people on either side holding his jaw and blood coming down his face. So I ran up to them. I said, hey, I've got medical. And I told the police officer who was there, I said, you know, I've got medical. And they said, well, we got another ambulance coming. And I kind of looked at his face, and literally it looked like his jaw was hanging off and kind of held by skin, but you know, it wasn't traumatic bleeding that was going to kill him right off the bat. And so I said, okay. And the cop was just like totally professional, totally helpful, you know, kind of like thanks. And so we watched a little bit more just to kind of see what was going to happen. And then, you know, Alex Jones from InfoWars, he apparently was on the other side of the Capitol, and all of a sudden he came streaming in with probably 25 or 30 people with him. And they headed into the crowd and worked their way up front. And at that point, I told Mindy, I said, it's going to start getting crazy here. I said, we need to egress. And we started working even a little bit further away. And about that time, the bulk of the crowd arrived. And everybody was just like, hey, you know, what was a great rally over there? What's happening over here? Totally unaware that there was already chaos going on up front. And oh, by the way, the people that were holding the guy's jaw said he was stabbed by BLM or Antifa. So there was already the awareness that there probably was some antagonists / infiltrators that had already worked into the crowd. So, you know, if they were the only infiltrators, who knows? But in any case, you know, our awareness was up. Even walking back to the hotel, it's like, you know, we might run into something, and kind of here's our plan. And we had appropriate, you know, legal means to try to defend ourselves a little bit with us.
Sure.
And anyway, so as the crowd got there, again, very little awareness anything was going on. As we started walking back to the hotel, then by that time, I'd say there's probably 75,000 people had made it up to the Capitol. And basically, we didn't know that people had started breaking in until we were actually off the Capitol grounds. And I got the alert on my phone that the protesters were inside the Capitol. And things are going down. And then I think it was about 3 o'clock or so, the report came in of the shooting inside and that kind of stuff. But while we were there, there was lots of tussling up front, but nobody had breached any barricades. It was basically just kind of fighting between, we might say, the most vocal Trump loyalists and perhaps some other antagonists who had either kind of blended into the crowd or, you know, specifically were put there to cause a ruckus.
I'm not sure what to think about some of this. I mean, we're talking about the possibility, and I say that somewhat heavily because I'm of the opinion that this obviously does happen, but the possibility that guerrilla warfare tactics are being used here, that people are specifically being sent in or are motivated to go in to cause all kinds of unrest and trouble.
That really shouldn't surprise us. And on the metro ride out here today, which actually was more quiet than we expected, everybody warned us it was going to be like running the gauntlet, but it was pretty tame. We met a gentleman, and he actually was one of the people inside the Capitol. And he was a Trump person, and he says, yeah, basically the non-Trump people were the ones breaking the windows and getting entry to the building, and everybody else just kind of rushed in along with it. And he thought after the fact, like, oh my God, what have I done? Is there pictures of me in the Capitol? Am I going to be arrested? Is this a felony? How many years in prison is it going to be? Well, they kind of got caught up in the euphoria of everything and basically followed the bad actors into the Capitol, and the rest of that is history.
I couldn't speak for any of them, certainly not all, or in a minority of them. But when you were posting on social media that you guys had seen enough, you were getting out of there and moving to someplace much safer, I was watching, I think, 8 or maybe 10 live feeds at the same time. And some of these folks were among the very handful, I mean, the very front. And I would define the very front as the first 50 or so people that were around the front doors of the Capitol building. And this one guy had well, I assume he was a gentleman. I guess I don't remember ever hearing him, but he had a cell phone up, and there were 2 guys in front of him that were squalling. They're like, "We're crushed in here. We can't get out." And one said to the other one, "How are we going to get out of here? They're pushing us all through the door." And he's like,
Yeah.
"I don't know." And so I think that they found themselves possibly at the wrong place, the wrong time. And then there was this big shove, and then they went. Now, I don't remember seeing those 2 guys on any of those feeds after that, whether they got out or under what circumstance, but
Right.
it looked like calamity up front to me.
Years ago, I got in a situation like that at a concert in Alabama where we were pressed against a fence, and literally I thought I might die. We ended up passing babies over the fence just to try to save babies. And I finally reasoned with law enforcement, said, if you don't drop this fence, you're going to have fatalities on your hand. And they went ahead and pulled the poles and dropped the fence. But that's how these things can get. That's why when we kind of kept exfilling to safer locations, I told Mindy, I said, look what side of the fence we're on. We're on the outside of the fence. So if this crowd goes crazy and crushes up against the fence, we're already on the outside. So we have a clear path to escape. And unfortunately, in these events, you have to look, right now it's peaceful, but if it goes bad, how are we going to get out of here with, minimal damage?
I've got one question I want to ask, and we can wrap this up. We don't want to take too long, and I know that you've got a flight to catch. But let me ask you this. You said you gave me the impression or said something about whether these folks look like Trumpers or non-Trumpers. How are you able to identify that, or how are people ascertaining that?
That's a good question, and you never can say for certain. But usually the people that bring gas masks, ballistic helmets, and pepper spray are probably not the Trump loyalists. Those are the people that came here and either had stuff in a backpack, which at the main part of the rally, you're not even allowed to have backpacks. You had to leave them outside. But obviously people came prepped. So if you're bringing a gas mask, goggles, and a ballistic, or at least some kind of hard hat, why exactly is that? So
I was going to say, when you see people showing up with masks that cover them and goggles, and they're carrying around milk, that ought to tell you plenty. And for those of you out there that don't know this, I've never actually been pepper sprayed and tried it myself, but I hear that a lot of people say that milk.
I have. I'm a certified OC instructor, actually.
Okay, well, let me ask you then. Does milk help? I mean, get rid of pepper and irritant and that kind of stuff when you're sprayed?
Yeah, the biggest thing is from the pepper spray manufacturers, if you can do this professionally, they actually make decontamination that works pretty good. The worst thing is to rub it around. So putting your head under a water hydrant is about the best thing. Let it flush out. Some people say dish soap, but as soon as you put the dish soap on, start rubbing it around, oh, you've made it so much worse.
Yeah.
So yeah, just running water on your face is the best thing, just to kind of cool off that reaction. But rubbing or anything else is not a good idea.
Well, as I said, I mean, when you're truly, again, back to a protest or a rally that quickly turns into a riot, if you see people running around with goggles and a whole bunch of milk, that ought to tell you that they plan on being in a position where it's likely that they'll get maced or chemical sprayed or peppered or whatever else, and they've got a contingency for it. So that ought to communicate to you one very important thing: don't be wherever those guys are.
Yeah, and you could see on their vests, most of them were dressed in camouflage. Some had helmets, some had little red stickers on the back of their helmets, and everybody was talking that there had been busloads of Antifa unloaded and even got motorcaded into the city. That's just conjecture. We never saw that. Yes, we saw a motorcade, and we thought maybe Trump was there, but we never actually saw where the motorcade went. They stopped, and then I never saw who got out. But anyway, we saw people with vests, and they had the big, Frontiersman 2.0 MCC content pepper spray, the good stuff, the $40 cans. When they have 2 or 3 of those on their vests and goggles and a helmet, probably a good sign to move to another location.
I agree. Well, listen, thank you. I'm glad that you and Mindy are safe. Thank you for going out there and making your presence known. Is there anything you need from me before you go?
Just appreciate the interview. I posted some of this on social media, and it's had a very negative reaction. Those that do know me from 30 plus years on KCCI, and you know I don't make up stories. I'm not any kind of whack job extremist. Those of you that are, you know, spreading this around and sending the hate mail, you know, I know who I am. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing.
Thank you for that. Take care. Thank you, John. Take care, Mindy. Get you guys home safe, and appreciate it, man.
All right. Talk to you soon, my brother.